Welcome to Maintaining Positivity, the podcast that looks at the headlines about health and fitness and digs deeper to look at the research behind the headlines. I'm your host, Brianna Bertolio, and I will help you separate the clickbait from the information you can use to live a healthier life. Is there anything more intoxicating than a diet book, or a general wellness book, or a particularly compelling self-help book? Have you ever gotten sucked into one of these books like the most exciting novel, the way most of us rarely do as adults, but as kids would secretly stay up late because we had to know what happens to Jane Eyre, or to find out who was the murderer in an Agatha Christie novel? Because I have. A book that claims to unlock the secret to what has been plaguing you is delicious. Cool statistics, even better. Flying in the face of conventional wisdom? Tell me more. Because whether it's decluttering, or making sure you have an equal balance of fats, carbs, and protein at every meal, the time between the information entering the brain and putting it into practice is exhilarating because you feel powerful. Information is power, and you have the information. So by the law of syllogism, you have the power. And power feels good. It certainly feels better than powerlessness. Notice I said the time between reading and implementing is the high. Because while there certainly are things we read in a self-help book that might make our lives easier or richer, we can rarely enact them with full fidelity. Nowhere is this more true than with the diet books specifically. Because diets don't work. Diets don't work. Diets don't work. Diets don't work. This is not to say that people can't or don't make sustainable changes in what they eat, and this in turn creates a cascade of health benefits, including weight loss, because that is possible. It does happen. So at this point, it might sound like I'm saying really contradictory things, so I'll define my terms better. When I say diet, I'm talking about something that is often in book form and a bestseller. The Atkins diet, the carbohydrate addict's diet, the South Beach diet, Dean Ornish, Prism, Why French Women Don't Get Fat, The Zone, an array of books on veganism, paleo, anti-sugar books. The research bears it out. All of these diets work. All of them. In the short term. Because they all have mechanisms in them that help people to reduce their caloric intake. The problem is very few people can stay on these diets. A typical path is a person does great for a while, loses weight, life happens, and then they can't maintain fidelity of implementation and either give up entirely or cheat. Please hear the quotation marks around that word. Please. They gain back the weight they lost and more, often from the slower metabolism and reduced muscle mass from the diet. The author cashes their check. The publisher cashes their check. And the hapless human is fatter and feeling worse about themselves, priming them to purchase a new book. Here I am describing this journey. But if you're listening, you probably already know this story, either from personal experience or from a loved one's. So now I start my book review in earnest. The Diet Fix, Why Diets Fail and How to Make Yours Work by Yoni Freedhoff M.D. First off, it's a good book, but has a terrible title. I heard Dr. Freedhoff in an interview explain that he also hates the title, and it was the publisher's decision, which I believe given the vibe of the book. To write this book, Freedhoff uses his personal experience working at an obesity clinic as a physician, but also draws from the body of research very thoughtfully to ground his claims. I found myself really impressed by the nuance and intellectual honesty he employs. He isn't making big swings designed to engage your emotions or paranoia. This isn't revealed truth. It's a way of reframing how we view behavior. In a nutshell, Freedhoff approaches the idea of dieting as a source of trauma. That diets traumatize people and in a very real way hurt people psychologically, in the way that things like abandonment, assault, or harassment can create lasting harm. This in of itself is such an interesting way to reframe one's experiences. Like the first thing I thought would help me didn't just not help me, it hurt me and made it harder to heal in the future. This alone is a valuable contribution. The book also digs into how shame around weight and eating contributes to this pain. He also looks at the psychological research on what is known about habit formation and change, and in what ways food is important to a part of our life. This can create a big shift if you are a person who believes the reason you have not been successful on a diet is because of your own personal weakness or lack of discipline. You're not bad. You're just a human behaving like most humans do, with the limitations of most humans. He addresses myths, the narratives told, such as sacrifice, denial, sweating, and others. Freedhoff goes on to describe what does seem to help people, both from his own clinical experience and from the research literature. The combination of both of these sources of information is both compelling and helpful because he can talk about a research finding and then illustrate it in the case of one of his patients. I really appreciate this technique because I think both it makes the research findings more understandable, but he doesn't rely solely on the anecdotal, which can be pretty skewed by the setting and location. From the research and the experience, he boils down his findings into guidelines that he believes are the most helpful. This creates a sort of best practices that are helpful in of themselves, but can also be applied to many other different ways of eating. After creating this theoretical framework, he applies it to the major diet, like the popular ones that I previously mentioned, but also to weight loss systems like Weight Watchers and TOPS. This means that the best practices are portable, whether a person is vegan or paleo, Atkins or gluten-free. He explains how to apply his guidelines to all of these different ways of eating because a basic premise is that the best and healthiest way to eat is one that is satisfying and enjoyable while still meeting a person's actual metabolic needs. Like, what a revelation. Eating should be enjoyable. Life should be enjoyable. But that's not always easy. So here's some tools to make it easier. If you read The Diet Fix, Why Diets Fail and How to Make Yours Work by Yoni Freedhoff M.D., you will probably not experience that roller coaster first kiss exhilaration of other diet books. You won't go on a supermarket sweep, tossing everything you own in your house. You won't feel like you received a special truth that the other suckers are too sheep-like to comprehend. But you might undo some major knots in your psyche. You might look at your life experiences really differently. You might experience self-compassion, and you might take the tools he offers to heart and use them to create a sustainable, enjoyable way of eating that improves your physical and emotional health and fits into your life, your beliefs, your culture, your religious practices, your lifestyle, your family, and just how you want to live your life. You can take how you live and just make some adjustments to make it fit in with some metabolic guidelines. And if you do use this book and it does help you, let me know by emailing me at maintainingpositivity@gmail.com. Please remember to like and subscribe, and remember, if you leave me a review, I will send you a picture of my head in a jar. No joke, it'll happen. Until next time, goodbye.